Now, you're a man, Jared, who you're very well informed in the football industry. So when you're throwing little ones,
this is
little
not
ones
information,
out like
Jono.
that.
This is speculation at its highest, I've got to say.
And it should be, and that speculation should be high because the names you've mentioned are well and truly, in the radar should be in the radar of these clubs, Essendon, North Melbourne, and Collingwood. Now, Collingwood for me is probably the most important of the three, considering where they are in terms of their ladder position, and what they're pushing for over the next probably 12 months to 2 years. Now, you've got a Collingwood
As
team.
in they're in the flag window.
They are. Well, after what we saw this year their performance. Now, the biggest challenge for Collingwood, I think a lot of us understand, is that they go from a position they were, fly this year, all of a sudden they're in a top 6 draw next year with the weighted draw, and that's going to be a lot tougher on the coaching, a lot tougher on the players.
As long as they win the close games again, John.
Well, that's the challenge. So therefore, we're talking about, and to win a flag, for me, it's full club stability. Now, on field, they've got that exactly right, and Craig McRae has, created real stable environment in terms of the football department. Graham Wright's a big part of that. Can he go now in the interim from running an unbelievable football department to running a club, and keeping that stable in that period of time until a position is filled? And so that's what they need to get right. And the person who enters the four walls of the Collingwood Football Club has to hit the ground running because of the position that they're in, compared to an Essendon and a North Melbourne, who are more building towards what they want to achieve over the years to come.
Still very important. I mean,
no doubt.
Your CEO, I mean, if I'm Essendon, I'm getting Peter Jackson as an interim almost. If you haven't got one very quickly, go and get Peter Jackson back, or even North Melbourne to help assist in the transition. They're no matter which club it is, they are just such critical positions. I can remember being down at the National playing golf once, and a CEO who didn't last very long wanted to talk about kicks and handballs and was doing videotapes. Clearly, you can pick the wrong person, and that person may not understand what their position is. And you got somebody like Gary Purdy, who's a great player in his own right, but Purdy wouldn't get involved in X's and O's on the whiteboard, would he?
That's right, because you've got the club to run.
Tom Harley's the same.
He's spot on, absolutely. And as much as the experience Tom Harley has in the football landscape and what he did as a player, and a coach in a small way with some of the coaching that he did do before stepping into management, he'd be one that you would listen to from an X and O's perspective.
Do you think Collingwood have got their man? It just seems too late in the day. In fact, we're going to talk to Pete Ryan from The Age, who wrote a column today along with Michael Gleeson and Jake Nile. He'll be as informed as anybody. We'll get to him very shortly. I got a few names. I know Peter Bell's been thrown up, and I think he will graduate or gravitate, if you like, to the top job. When is the only question for me. Kylie Rogers from the AFL is another name that just keeps continually.
I think Kylie would be an excellent choice for one of these three clubs with their experience and growing in terms of her own personality in the footy landscape. I think it's huge.
A mate of mine, Adrian Anderson, you've thrown up. I mean, Adrian is one of the best sports lawyers in the game right now. Very busy, but he may re-enter. I think Laura Kane, who sat beside Brad Scott in the AFL, has got a future. Whether or not it's now, it's got to be a question. Graham Wright himself, Jono. Could Graham Wright step up, or would that be a silly decision given that?
I think he's in his sweet spot right now, Graham Wright. So to run a club, maybe he has got that ability. I'm not too sure. The one for me, the one name that I would be going to chase is Simon Lloyd from Geelong Football Club. Now, Simon has got the experience across a number of different platforms over a period of time, and what he's been able to do in helping set up the stability at the Cats and the way that they actually do things from a football point of view has been huge. So can he step up to be a CEO of a club? I've got no question.
The other one is former Fremantle CEO Steve Rossich, who's in town, and he may be looking to get back in the industry. It seems, Jono, pretty certain that South Australia are going to win the right to host the AFL version of what Rugby League call the Magic Round, which needs another name. We've got to. It's
we
not
have to work on this.
It's probably the first one we've pinched from Rugby League. They pinched State of Origin and turned it into.
Well, it's worked, hasn't it? Because we're naming it Magic, and that's their thing. So we've got to come up with our own.
Well, I'm not sure where we go to, but let's just pinch one from Fox Footy, the iconic. If you go back to the pandemic days, where there was, I think it was 17 games in 17 days. The Festival of Footy.
Yes,
that'll do for the moment
like
until someone can come up with a better name. You might want to give us a call or send us a tweet on what you think it should be called. But we can head over to South Australia, where the number one journalist and hope host of The Run Home on SEN SA, Michelangelo Rucci, joins us. Welcome to you, Rucci. You're looking forward to 9 games over the space of a few days in South Australia?
The festival of football in the festive state of South Australia. It might just work, Jared.
That'll do.
Just be the post.
You can run with that, Rucci, and maybe just tidy it up a little bit. Have you got inside knowledge as to whether or not it's absolutely a done deal? Because evidently your Premier is an AFL fanatic.
Yeah, well, we spoke to the Premier this evening on our show, Kimbo and the Reach to Run Home, and he certainly has enough verve in his voice to be able to say that he's going to win this battle.
Yeah.
It's been on the SA agenda for more than 2 years now. It's a way in which, ever since Adelaide Oval was opened in 2014, it was about bringing footy in the city, but also bringing people to the city of Adelaide. So It's an enormous pick on that front. Now, the unfortunate thing about Adelaide is we only have one AFL venue, and you're not going to get 9 games played at Adelaide Oval from Thursday night to Sunday twilight. So they're going to have to find other places. The Premier wants to take it to the Barossa, where it'll be part of the tourism. He's going to need a venue in Adelaide, such as the Norwood Oval, which is under a bit of work being done there at the moment to make it up to AFL standard. Where the third venue is probably going to have to be another regional point, but that's going to require a fair bit of work. So it doesn't have that advantage that you could have had in New South Wales, where you go Sydney with the many venues there, Canberra, or Queensland with Townsville, Cairns, Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
Mm.
What they'll sell it on, as they have, is that they can put on 9 games and draw crowds, which is a whole interesting debate on this. The key questions the AFL still need to answer is, why do we need the extra round in the season? Now, clearly there's going to be a financial spin to that, an advantage to the telecasters and broadcasters. We get that. But we've debated for a fair while about the length of the season and so forth, so that debate will go on. But the key question for me is, if we're bringing in this special round to promote the game, where do we really need the greatest promotion? And have we suddenly run scared of the NRL in New South Wales? Are we backing off? Like, Gerard, you and I are both old enough to remember where in the 1970s we took games. We even took a state game between South Australia and Victoria and sadly lost Barry Robran to a knee injury at the SCG in the 70s to promote our game. 50 years later, we're running scared of the NRL. I think we've got a bigger debate to work through than just where we're putting this magic round. So there's a fair few boxes still to unpack here. But generally, I would think you'd find safest bet is they go with Adelaide, see what it's like first up, and let's see if the whole concept develops to an annual thing like it has for the NRL. But I do ask the question again and again, why are we doing it? What's the end game other than just making more money? And do we need to then say, if it is about promotion and building the game, we can't be scared about what happens north of the Murray. We've got to back ourselves in.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you raise about the promotion. I personally think if you're going to trial something, you want to have it. You want to have it a success from day one. And given the crowds that turn up out in the West, I wouldn't be confident of putting a game out there unless you're playing 2 big teams, and you might draw 10 or 15,000, and that would be fine. But I mean, the Giants can't draw 3,000 people there at the present time if they're playing against one of the lesser names. So putting two small clubs, if you like, putting the Gold Coast versus the Kangaroos, for instance, out in the west of Sydney, you're going to get as many people as who travel for the Kangaroos, and they've got their loyal supporters who will travel, but you want to make it a success. You don't want to actually highlight it, and I think we're still well short. That's another issue for the Commission to work out, just how well are we going north of the Murray, outside of the Sydney Swans and the Brisbane Lions, just exactly how well are we going. But to me, Adelaide was always the perfect option, and I guess the question is how many people from Melbourne are going to travel to Adelaide. I mean, the beauty is you don't have to fly. It's an 8-hour trip. It's not that taxing. I mean, flights are now so expensive. I think that would be a real incursion on going to Sydney. But to Adelaide, for Melbourne people, obviously, it's not that big a deal.
So the other big question is, if you need a big opening for this festival round? Does it have to open with a Thursday night showdown, which would also appease the clubs coming into Adelaide saying, well, none of us are getting a home field advantage, and we don't want Port Adelaide and the Crows to get an extra leg up at Adelaide Oval?
It's a good point. I like that. I like that as an answer, Rooch, to the questions that will be thrown out from that point of view. What type of crowd then do you think will head out to the Barossa if it is, say, North Melbourne versus Gold Coast that are played out there? Will the traditional footy lovers just get to an AFL game?
Oh, look, say it's Williston, which has held pre-season games. I remember there was a Giants Port Adelaide one. You put the right infrastructure in place, I would imagine that game to draw between 5,000 and 7,000. Now, the classic question here is, what game do you put there? Because you know there are going to be some games, even if you put them at Adelaide Oval, you're not going to draw a massive crowd, even though the Premier says the one thing you can guarantee in South Australia is a crowd will turn up. But when you've got 9 games on a weekend, and there will be a fatigue factor, there will be an economy factor, how many tickets can you buy, how many games can you afford to go to either in cost or with time? Well, let's take a classic one. If it was Fremantle v Gold Coast, how many would you get at Adelaide Oval? You're better off probably having that game at a regional event where you can draw 7,000 and say that's a success. I mean, there's a fair bit to work out on how this festival round actually looks to be marked as a success.